Welcome back to Morgan's video blog with writing tips from the pros and, of course, my own writerly musings. Today I'm here with my Balticon 2022 recap. Now, as an aside, while I don't want to downplay the seriousness of any controversies coming out of Balticon 56, this post will be focused on my personal Balticon and not any of the surrounding issues. That said, it's been a very long week. Let's start back last Thursday. Now, I woke up, I pre purchased the parking via the linked app or the linked web page on the Balticon website because I'd heard some people had issues with the app and it went through smoothly. Then I finished packing up my car and headed out early in the wrong direction. A late planned family visit had snuck onto my Thursday schedule. On the way, I called and let my friend Sako, who I'd roped into doing photography for Balticon, I called her and let her know that I'd be late picking her up. And she informed me that she thought I was coming on Friday and she was going car shopping after some bad news at the repair shop. So I ended up visiting family longer than expected and picked her up close to 7 before heading into Baltimore. After my 7th hour in a car that day, um, we got to, we found a parking spot like 20 steps from the elevator entrance for the hotel. We checked in, I unpacked because that's the kind of traveler I am. And the whole time I'm driving, Google Drive is letting me know that my sister slash alpha reading is making comments on my space fantasy. I carefully dismissed them without reading them because I like to read them all at once. We met up with my friend Doc and grabbed dinner together in the hotel. The first time both of my weekly live stream cohorts had hung out in the flesh. Then I tracked down the con chair, made sure everything I needed the next day was ready, and finally, bed. Friday, I woke bright and early, gave a training class to the Zoom hosts, and then found my way to the reg desk where I'd offer to help staff. Much to my relief, and to the registration staff's relief, 3 unexpected trained staff from our last in person Balticon had shown up. So they didn't really need me, which was good because I'd forgotten that I had like 6 different signs and posters, of which had multiple copies that needed to get hung all over the hotel. It's surprising how long hanging signs can take. Um, I got roped into helping out a couple guests and ran a few errands, and after several stops at the art show, they were finally ready for me to sign in and hang my artwork, display only, to show off my recent foray into woodworking. Lunch with Doc and Sako again. I think the days are kind of a blur. And I picked up one of the bookworm temporary tattoos, which is like half off me at this point. But yeah. So I posted a few kickoff things on the social media and got ready for my first panel, How to Be a Good Panelist. Panels about paneling and moderating are always so well run. Hat tips to Mildred Katie, Dot Coleman, and Wendy Van Camp. The panel went quite well, although I did stop one attendee from sharing some comments, not questions, with the panel after we'd run out of time. Sorry, Dad. Next up, opening ceremonies, where the guests of honor and the special guests introduced themselves, and the bookworm finally got her name, Minerva, with over 100 votes. Or, sorry, after over 100 people had voted. That was the favorite. So then I had to rush back to my room for my virtual panel, Dynamic Voice Acting, where I was moderator. We were still answering questions when we ran out of time. It was a great panel with excellent panelists, Doc Coleman, Max Baskin, and Chris Lester. And then it was time for my first timers and friends social hour. I messaged for a room key and waited. One of the staffers' kids was really not wanting to go to bed and said hi to me a few times while I waited and waited About 10 minutes after my event was supposed to start, people are piling up in the hall. I ran down to ops, checked out the room key, and ran back up in like 2 minutes. I'd met Shay earlier that day, and she'd helped round up an excellent crowd of people, a few actual first timers, and several others that are happy to meet new people. When I finally kicked people out about an hour, 90 minutes later, one of the party goers, whose name I have totally forgotten, wave if you find this post, walked me back to my room to drop off the leftovers, and then we went in search of dinner. Well, with a stop by ops to drop off the key, but they said they had a spare so I could keep it for my party the next night. Most things were closed, but Miriam, who had just finished the Meet the Scientist or whatever that mingle was called, scrounged up some leftovers for us. We ate, we chatted, and then I found my way to bed. Saturday, I managed to wake up just in time to make it to my vaccine checking spot 10 minutes late. After a mostly smooth hour, I got ready for my Balticon tour. I ended up with about 6 guests following me around the main level, and I kind of ran out of things to say after about half an hour. Then did a little help desk support for the schedule and the parking apps. After a quick trip through the dealer's hall, I ran into Doc and we decided it was past time for us to grab some lunch, and Sako joined us there. Doc and Sako both had to laugh at me when I squeed loudly while checking my messages. My twin slash alpha reader had finished reading my space fantasy and loved it. Plus, she had a lot of actionable suggestions for improvements. I did manage to hit one panel, writing fight scenes, but had clearly eaten too much lunch because I almost nodded off while taking notes at a very interesting panel. So my next act was a nap, an excellent nap. I met up with some friends I'd met at Discon 3 for dinner, Brandon, Aaron, and John, and we made the trek to Moe's seafood place where we proceeded to eat far too much. And I couldn't blame a lack of key for my tardy opening of the crafting and coloring chillaxathon, where a crowd was waiting for me. Half of them immediately beelined for the coloring books and coloring pencils, while one person was working on a sewing project and another was working on a knitting, crocheting. I forgot to look if they were holding needles. Anyway, some excellent chats, great company, although the singular competing room party and lack of food making it a COVID anxious friendly event probably helped its success. I did slip away for a little bit and chatted with Ian Struck and his friend Leslie, who I learned is also a twin and that we're like less than a year apart in age. After that distraction, I slipped back to my sorely neglected party and finished coloring. I finally kicked people out a little after 1 a.m. and then wandered to see what other parties were still going and managed to find my friend Marcia helping clean up from one. On Sunday, I woke and managed to injure myself in the shower. Anyway, I made it down for my vax checking a little late, but we were double scheduled, so Maria took the shift and volunteered me to hang more signs, this time for the survey that helps get the demographics for both improving Balticon and getting us grant money. And then it was time for some backstage staff work. They kept me running, but I finally escaped to Starbucks about 2 o'clock because I wanted breakfast and caffeine, not lunch, and I got an egg sandwich and a vanilla chai latte. I know, anyway, I'm saying the same thing more than once. Anyway, when I got back to the con, I found I needed to move my Morgan's Lazy Sunday afternoon quote unquote productivity stream live from Balticon out of the con suite. There was a memorial ice cream social, and there was no way I could compete with that. So after checking with ops and scouting the entire convention space, Doc Sacco and I managed to squat on the first floor lobby in the corner. Nicholas, one of the volunteers, and a local college student checked us out, but other than that, our audience was generally limited. And a couple of the Zoom hosts checked us out, But other than that, my audience was mostly my regulars from YouTube and Twitch, which I love having anyway. So I did have to dart out for one sprint to go get my art because the art show was closing down, but otherwise, successful stream. Next up was dinner with my dad and his partner and my almost stepsister, and I invited my friends from the night before, who showed up with Scott Edelman, where we had some delicious Afghan food that was maybe a little bit more of a walk than we wanted, but it helped walk off the food on the way back. Then I wandered for several hours, popping to the bar for a bit, chatting with people at the 3D modeling table, then ops. I knew at this point if I sat down for more than 15 minutes, I was going to fall asleep. So, what did I do when ops said that the film festival would uh, know the results and the winner in the next 45 to 90 minutes? I said I'd stay up and post them. Strategic error. So I hit the tech party for a while. I wandered to the con suite. I chatted with Etta for a bit. And finally, the results were out. I posted them, swung through the tech party to say goodnight, and crashed out. Monday, I woke far too early and just checked out social media for a bit. Finally, getting up in time to actually get breakfast before the breakfast buffet ended. I'd hoped to say hi to the coworker I talked into coming to talk about flying cars. I didn't see him, but I was reassured he'd gotten his badge. After breakfast with Sako, I was ready to moderate my final panel, How and When to Chapter, with Electra Hammond, Carol, Guy Zander, and special guest Owen Spencer. I worried when we got through my prepared questions in like 20 minutes, but the audience had plenty of their own, and I had a few questions about struggles I've been having with my own writing. So I think it turned out okay. Great panelists. Helped. Next up was checking out of my hotel room before setting up an office and ops to do some social media stuff. There I am at almost 3 p.m. trying to get more staff photos because like 15 people sent them in when I am informed that the Improving Balticon panel had started at 2:30 and not 4. So I rushed over and sat in the back for the end of that. And then it was time to make sure all my signs were down, my time card was handed in to the volunteer desk, and my laptop was packed up. I wanted to stay for the dead dog party, but I was tired. I wasn't up to helping load the truck, and my photographer slash carpooler needed to get home before shipping off to Prague Power in Atlanta the next day, so we bailed. The traffic gods were kind, even if some of the drivers were questionable. I got home and gave Catechus the snuggles he'd been waiting for all weekend, and he only bit my face once. My ankles, on the other hand, let's not talk about that. Car unloaded, I settled in for the evening, just in time for my Saturday and Sunday dinner companions to let me know they tested positive for COVID. So far, so good for me. Keep your fingers crossed. I'm going to test again in the morning. And that was my Balticon. Let me know if you met up with me and I didn't name drop you. I love to connect with people. I hope you had a good weekend, and I'll be back again next week with more writing tips and writerly musings. Bye bye.